backed by popular demand. This is the Turnbucklepad podcast on YouTube.com. Respect wrestling or get out.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Turnbucklepad podcast. I am your host, Mike Stover, and today's guest, he's not a stranger to the Turnbucklepad. In fact, he's probably the only guest that is a reoccurring guest, and it's always great to have him. You all know him, you all love him. Former pro wrestler and fitness health advisor, he is none other than Alex Thorn. Alex, thanks for coming back, buddy.
Absolutely, man. Always a pleasure.
You're always somebody that's on the move for a new opportunity and looking to make something out of yourself more and more. And you started off in pro wrestling. Now, we know that's a passion of yours. Did you find things in pro wrestling that helped propel you into other opportunities from other markets?
I would say my experience in pro wrestling helped me with everything that came afterwards. There's never a time or a new opportunity comes up for me where I don't think back to something in my pro wrestling career that actually helped me learn what I'm doing today. I'll just use a small little example. When you're an entrepreneur and you're networking, you may not always like who you're networking with, but you learn to, they have something you want something they have, all that stuff. And in wrestling, it was the same thing where, you're not always going to like who you're working with, but for those 8 to 12 minutes that you're scheduled out there, you're going to make it work. You're going to do what you have to do to, make each other look good. And it's, some of the same things I've used today. It's something I learned in wrestling.
You mentioned earlier that sometimes when networking or working in the wrestling business, you have to work with people that you don't like. Can you elaborate on maybe a few of them?
A few of the people that I didn't like?
People you had a hard time working with.
It was Mike, you had to put me on the spot with that one.
Hey, it's a turnbuckle pad. Anything goes.
Well, I'll say this. A lot of the guys that I had trouble working with, they're not in the business anymore, so they're not relevant. They weren't relevant when we did work together, and they're not relevant now because they're out of the business. But there was a promoter. He was a worker back then, and I never actually got the chance to work with him, but he was with us towards the end of UWC. He came in, and now he's a promoter. And he runs Anarchy Pro Wrestling, and that's Santana Starks. He's one guy that I don't think after the first 2 or 3 weeks of him being in UWC, we just made sure we stood at opposite ends of the locker room of the training center. We made sure we were never close to each other. There was just something there. You knew that there was some heat. There was something there between us. And till this day, I'm pretty sure it exists. I know it exists on my part. I don't like the guy. But, whenever Dante asked me to run something by him, see if he was okay with it, or tell him the direction of a match that was going on or something, I did it. So despite me not even wanting to look at the guy and not thinking he was even worthy to be in the pro wrestling business, I still made it work.
Well, and that's pretty much how business is supposed to be done. We're supposed to set aside our pride and our personal feelings and thoughts and do what's best for business and to do what we're hired to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it sounds like you didn't really have too many instances, though, where that kind of crossed paths or it affected any kind of opportunity or anything that was going your way at the time, did it?
There was a few people. There was 2 guys named Aaron and Darwin that would help book. They were there for about a year. We had quite a bit of heat with each other. It was sprung off on their part right away, just because, they were coming in with creative ideas, and I shot one of their ideas down, and after that I put it in the outhouse for it, and then after that, whenever I would come back, and I wasn't on contract with them at the time, and they were bringing in new people and putting people who were on contract in higher positions. And, I would occasionally come back between working other federations. I'd come back every maybe 3 months for one of UWC's shows, and I'd ask the boss, Gio, if I could come by and have a match. He said, yeah, come by, we'll have something for you, throw you somewhere. And then Aaron and Darwin wouldn't want to work with me one minute. So, again, those are 2 guys that they were in it for a cup of coffee, and they didn't get into anything afterwards. They had zero involvement before UWC and zero involvement after. So, they were fans. And, that's the company that we were dealing with at the time. Something where people were in it as a cup of coffee. And that's a shame because it could have been a much better company if we had people who actually knew what they were talking about in that company.
Do you think that was kind of one of the reasons why wrestling's kind of taken a downward spiral, so to speak, now that people know what it's about and they know how it's done, they know it's a work? Do you think now, because those things are evident and the people you had to work with, like you just described, do you think that kind of opened a door, and which kind of, it took away the mystique from wrestling when these people started coming in?
Absolutely. It's basically every time Dick and Harry get into the business now, as opposed to before, they charge you this big, huge upfront fee, and then they put you through hell. They literally beat the hell out of you, and probably break something in the process. That would be to determine whether or not you were really tough enough and you really had it in your heart to get over that injury and come back in. That's just an old school style of training. But today, in the last probably decade or so, there's a wrestling school every few 100 miles, and it's pretty much like an extended chain, like having a fast food restaurant where everybody's got a wrestling school, everybody has access to buying a ring for, $1,500 to $3,000, and, oh, well, I got a ring, and now we got a wrestling school. And guys who've never been in the business, guys who, never gone out of their local scene, it's guys who made it to maybe one trial match in WWE or one trial match back in WCW that are still running schools. And it's a little difficult to actually turn out good talent if you were never one yourself. I applaud anybody who was a local indie darling and they open up a wrestling school, but as long as they have connections. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that guys who never made WWE or guys who only were there for, a tryout match don't deserve to have wrestling schools. They can, as long as they incorporate guys like Al Snow and the connections they made in the WWE and on the indie circuit to come and educate the wrestling students more. Because there's no way that you can teach kids on how to get from where you've never been.
Would you say there's a lot of the blind leading the blind nowadays in wrestling?
Absolutely.
So with that being said, you broke away and you left the wrestling business and you went into health and fitness, which you've done a phenomenal, tremendous job with keeping up with it and really making a name for yourself. There's not anything that I don't come across online when I see health or fitness and I don't see Thornfitness attached to it or your name coming up. Is there something in wrestling that you learned that applies currently to what you're doing?
The self-promotion part. The self-promotion of pro wrestling. When you're out there and, you're depending on only your payday to get you through the week or something like that, you're a fool. Because you're your own brand. Nobody's going to create products for you. So in wrestling, I learned that very quickly, that I needed to make 8x10s, that I needed to make 4x6s, that I needed to sign autographs, that I needed to take pictures, that I needed to make posters, that I needed to quote myself on radio interviews, now podcasts and that thing. Same thing that I took, and when I created Thornfitness, I knew that I needed to be seen. I knew that we needed to have products. We could just open up a small-time gym and say, hey, this is just another option for you. No, it's not just another option. This is the destination if you're serious for your body. There really is no other choice other than Thornfitness if you live in the Chicagoland area. And if you're not in the Chicagoland area, then you need to go to thornfitness.com and check out our online training guide. So, I really promoted it because, as you know, Bret Hart isn't widely considered such as it was and ever will be, but he said he was. So eventually fans accepted that he was, right? So self-proclamation was something I learned in the wrestling that I definitely brought over to Thornfitness, and it's a big reason why people, say, hey, I feel like I've heard of Thornfitness before, even if they haven't.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to be done. It's if you hear a name with someone, even if you don't know the product, but you heard the name so many times, that's something that you really want to be happening in order to be successful, don't you?
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about your podcast for a minute here, Alex. Your Thornfitness, you focused on the physical health and helping people become healthier and stronger and more fit and in shape. And what I noticed with your Live to Win podcast, you take a mental approach with your Live to Win podcast, but when you're training people in person, you're doing the physical aspect. So, would you say that you aim both the mind, body, and soul when it comes to helping someone be more physically fit?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it that way. I don't necessarily put it mind, body, and soul. Some people associate it with, like something with religion or something of that nature. But, with the mentality. The Live to Win, at first it just came off of Paul Stanley's song. He had an album, a solo album, I think in 2000 came out that was called Live to Win. And more importantly than the album or the song or the artist was just the message, what that meant. Whenever I heard it, it made me feel better. And I started to think about it, and it was pretty much a metaphor for my own life, how, I was never meant to be a wrestler. They from a young age, having EDS type 3, they always told me, you shouldn't lift anything heavy, you shouldn't move too much, you shouldn't play sports, you shouldn't do this, you should do that. And, I broke away from that and became a wrestler, what I always wanted to do. And, in essence, they were right, because it definitely broke down my body more than it did other guys, because of having EDS type 3. But after that, going into personal training, again, something that they said, you shouldn't be lifting heavy weights. You shouldn't be, let's say climbing ladders, was basically having to do with putting my shoulders a certain length past my head. It's like, I'm doing it. And now I'm showing other people how to do it. So I truly did learn how to live to win. And bringing that over to Thornfitness, it was like, okay, I can train you, but that it doesn't stop there. Once you leave the Thornfitness training facility, now you have to have that live to win mindset. You have to eat correctly. You have to look at the rest of the world and say, I'm not like you, and I'm not going to give up my power to you. So, it's a mentality thing, it's a training thing, it's a physical, it's a mind thing. And at the end of the day, that's the mentality everybody who's going to be successful in anything they do has to take. They have to have that live to win mentality. And, there's a sense of having that tribe mentality too, with the Team Thorn catchphrase I'm always using, a Team Thorn for this, Team Thorn for that. Because people feel good when they're a part of something. People feel good when they know that they're with others who are like-minded. So it's an important thing. It's a real important thing to wrap all of those together.
Indeed, it is. I mean, I don't think it just applies to just, whether you want to be a wrestler, whether you want to be a health fitness trainer, if you want to be a singer-songwriter, an actor. I think those are very golden basic principles behind any kind of success you want to achieve in life. But the last question I have for you, Alex, what do you think about these NXT guys showing up in TNA showing up in NXT?
I think it's I think it's a sign, a huge sign for TNA that they've made all the wrong moves. I mean, I just got done talking to one of TNA's stars who will be on. Actually, I can say it on the podcast. It's pretty much set in stone already. The interviews in the can, as they say. But I just got done talking to Robbie E. For my podcast.
The Bro Man, Robbie E.
The Bro Man, Robbie E. Yes, sir. Former tag team champion, former X Division champion, former television champion, reality star, all of that, Robbie E. But I just got done talking to him, and I asked him a very similar question about kind of TNA locker room changing completely. It's not the same locker room that was there 3 years ago, not the same locker room that was there 5 years ago. And it's one of those things where it's a sign for TNA that your homegrown talent will leave you if you don't take care of them. And I think they dropped the ball. I think they're on their last leg. But I think it's way overdue for talent like Samoa Joe and recently
James Storm.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently James Storm just went over there. I think it's way overdue for guys like that. They deserve to see what a wrestling company done right looks like. And of course, that's not saying that WWE does no wrong. We know they do. We know they start something great and screw it up and all that stuff. Fine. But as of 1984, even before that, New York, 1979, WWF was the place to be, and the WWF was the place to be, and WWE is the place to be. There's no working around that. They are the kings of the wrestling world, the pro wrestling entertainment world. It's just, that's what they do. There's no other name that people be over there at some point, and of course Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle to come back. But again, for them to lose Ric Flair, Hogan, Sting, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, James Storm, some of those names are names that you never thought would ever be TNA.
Yeah.
And for them to leave it means there's no more, there's no more hope juice left in that cup. They stopped drinking it. They stopped drinking whatever Dixie was giving them because it wasn't working. So I think they're on their last leg, but it's great for the actual athletes themselves.
Yeah, and they'll definitely bring a lot to the table and, help not so much shape it up, but add to the impact and the entertainment value that NXT has to offer. Because I'm finding NXT to be a lot more fun to watch than watching Monday Night Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah, a lot of other people share the same opinion as you.
Yes, sir. Well, fans, this comes to the end of our interview with Mr. Alex Thorn. If you want to find him, you can find him on Twitter, the Live to Win podcast. You can find him on Facebook. You can find him on Google. You can find him almost anywhere. He's not a hard man to find. Have you came into any new opportunities to where more people can find you, Alex?
Absolutely. With the everybody has a story to tell. Like, you have a story to tell. The woman down the street, the crazy cat lady that everybody's scared of, has a story to tell. The big guy in the gym, the guy who's at the top of WWE, and the guy who's cleaning the locker room in Stamford, Connecticut, has a story to tell. And that's where I'm going next, because I have a story to tell as well. And my next venture is actually writing a book. And that book title is called The Book of Thorn, Volume 1, Live to Win, right, obviously. And it's kind of using my life and the things that I've overcome, the mistakes that I've made, and what I've learned to help others. That goes all the way across the board from, being a young wrestling fan to achieving my dream of wrestling, having, the EDS type dream, which is a bone density and muscle tissue disability, to becoming a musician and playing on stage in front of 10,000 people, to, getting into the personal training field and using my entrepreneurial kind of skills and harnessing that to show others, look, you can be all that you want to be, but you have to believe in yourself first. You have to look in the mirror and say, today I will live to win.
Amen to that. Ain't no other better way to start your day off, fans, than to wake up positive, feeling confident, and ready to take the world on. And I think that's kind of where Thornfitness uses influences. They influence you to be your best, to tackle all opportunities to the fullest amount you can get out of them.
Absolutely.
Well, fans, this concludes our time with Mr. Alex Thorn. Alex, we thank you for stopping by the show and getting to talk with us a little bit more. I'm sure we'll have you back on again soon. But in the meantime, fans, this is Mike Stover, and this is my guest, Alex Thorn, and we're out.